Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm excited to kick off today's presentation on listening comprehension. This is our first slide, so I want to start by introducing the topic with enthusiasm. Today, we'll explore key strategies and techniques to improve your listening skills. We'll cover what listening comprehension involves, practical tips, and some common challenges. I promise it'll be a useful and engaging session, so let's get started. Let's take a quick look at the contents of today's presentation. We'll start with the meaning of listening, which is fundamental to understanding its role in communication. Then, we'll explore the basic types of listening, so you can recognize different listening situations. Moving on, we'll discuss the stages of the listening process to see how effective listening unfolds step by step. After that, we'll address some common fallacies about listening, which often hinder our ability to truly understand others. Next, we'll consider the importance of listening, why it matters so much in personal and professional contexts. We'll also examine barriers to effective listening, highlighting what can get in the way of truly hearing someone. Then, we'll look at why people sometimes don't listen, uncovering the reasons behind this common challenge. Following that, we'll share practical tips on how to listen effectively, helping you improve your listening skills. Finally, we'll wrap up with references and thank yous. All of these points are interconnected, contributing to our overall goal of becoming better listeners and communicators. Let's take a closer look at what we mean by meaning in listening. Listening comprehension is really about much more than just hearing the words that are spoken. It involves actively engaging with the message being conveyed. So it's a process where we receive information, yes, but then we also interpret and construct meaning from it. This can come from spoken words or even nonverbal cues like gestures, tone of voice, or facial expressions. It's important to understand that listening is an active process, not a passive one. We need to focus, analyze, and make sense of what we're hearing in order to truly understand. This active engagement is what makes listening a skill that can be developed and improved. Connecting this to our overall theme, understanding that listening is active helps us realize why effective communication depends so much on good listening skills. It's not just about hearing sounds, it's about creating meaning from those sounds and responses. Let's take a closer look at the basic types of listening. When we talk about listening, it's not just a passive activity. There are different styles that serve different purposes. The first type is active listening. This is where you focus completely on the speaker, making an effort to understand not just the words but the emotions behind them. It involves giving full attention, asking questions, and providing feedback. It's essential in building trust and clarity. Next, there's empathetic listening. This kind of listening is about connecting emotionally with the speaker. You're really trying to understand their feelings and perspectives, which helps in creating a supportive environment. It's especially useful in conflict resolution or when someone needs to be heard. Then we have critical listening. This involves analyzing and evaluating the message. You're not just hearing words, you're assessing the information for accuracy, logic, and significance. Critical listening is crucial when making decisions based on what you've heard. Finally, there's passive listening. This is when you hear the words but aren't fully engaged or processing the message deeply. It can happen during distractions or when you're not fully interested. While passive listening might seem less active, understanding its limitations helps us recognize when we need to shift to more engaged listening styles. Connecting these types of listening to our overall theme, recognizing which style to use in different situations can significantly improve our communication and relationships. Being aware allows us to listen more intentionally and effectively. Let's take a closer look at active listening. First, understanding all things is key. This means truly grasping not just the words being spoken, but also the feelings and intentions behind them. It's about being fully present in the moment. Next, proper interaction is essential. This involves engaging appropriately, asking clarifying questions, and showing genuine interest. It helps build trust and keeps the communication flowing smoothly. Lastly, proper feedback ties everything together. Giving thoughtful responses confirms that you've understood correctly and encourages ongoing dialogue. When we combine these elements, understanding, interaction, and feedback, we create a more effective and meaningful communication process. This approach is fundamental to the overall theme of effective communication and building stronger relationships. Selective listening can often happen without us even realizing it. Basically, our minds tend to remember only certain parts of what we hear. This might be because the topic isn't particularly interesting or relevant to us at the moment. When that happens, we filter out a lot of the information, focusing only on what catches our attention or what we find important. It's important to recognize that this kind of selective listening can affect our understanding and communication. If we're not paying full attention, we might miss key details or misunderstand the message altogether. So, in the context of effective communication, being aware of this tendency helps us stay more engaged and attentive, ensuring we're truly absorbing the information being shared. Let's talk about what happens when we ignore listening. Not listening to others at all might seem like a shortcut, but in reality, it can cause serious issues. When we don't pay attention, we miss out on understanding their perspectives, feelings, and needs. This neglect can lead to strained relationships, meaning the trust and connection we have with others start to deteriorate. So the key takeaway here is that ignoring listening doesn't just affect communication. It can really harm our relationships over time. Remember, active listening is essential for maintaining healthy and strong connections with others. Let's take a closer look at the stages of the listening process. First, we have hearing, which is simply perceiving sound through our ears. It's the most basic level of listening. Next, we move into focusing on the message, where we actively pay attention to what is being said, setting aside distractions. Then comes interpreting, where we start to make sense of the message, trying to understand the speaker's meaning. After that, we analyze and evaluate the information, assessing its relevance and credibility. Responding is the next step, where we give feedback, whether verbal or nonverbal, to show we're engaged. Finally, remembering involves retaining the information for future use. Understanding these stages helps us become better listeners, which is crucial for effective communication. When we listen actively through these steps, we not only understand better, but also build stronger connections and trust. So, keep in mind that listening is more than just hearing. It's an active, deliberate process that shapes our interactions and relationships. Now, let's talk about some common fallacies about listening that we often believe to be true. First, many people think that listening is not their problem. They might assume that as long as they hear words, they're listening well, but that's not really the case. Good listening involves more than just hearing sounds. It's about actively engaging with what's being said. Next, there's the idea that good readers are automatically good listeners. While reading and listening both involve comprehension skills, they are different skills, and being skilled in one doesn't necessarily mean you'll excel in the other. Then we often hear people say that listening and hearing are the same thing. But hearing is just a passive, physiological process, your ears picking up sound, whereas listening is active. It requires focus and understanding. Another misconception is that listening improves simply with age and experience. While experience can help, effective listening is a skill that needs intentional practice, regardless of how many years you've been around. Finally, some believe that smarter people are better listeners, but intelligence doesn't automatically translate to better listening skills. Good listening depends more on mindset and deliberate effort than on IQ. Understanding these fallacies helps us realize that listening is a skill we can develop intentionally, and it's essential for effective communication. Let's talk about the importance of effective communication. First, it's essential to avoid communication errors because misunderstandings can lead to bigger issues down the line. By communicating clearly, we also show respect for others' viewpoints, which fosters a positive and collaborative environment. Moreover, good communication helps us learn something new every day. When we listen and share openly, learning becomes a natural part of our interactions. In fact, communication is directly proportional to learning. The more we communicate effectively, the more we grow intellectually and personally. It's also a key to success in almost any field. Whether you're leading a team, negotiating, or building relationships, strong communication skills open doors. And finally, communication empowers your personality. It allows you to express yourself confidently, showcase your ideas, and influence others positively. So, overall, mastering communication isn't just a skill. It's a vital tool that impacts every aspect of our growth and success. Now, let's talk about some common barriers to effective listening. One major category is physical barriers, which can really disrupt our ability to listen attentively. First, noise is a big factor. Loud environments can make it hard to focus on what's being said. Then, we have defective mechanical devices, like malfunctioning microphones or speakers, which can cause misunderstandings or missed information. Lastly, an uncomfortable environment. Think about poor seating, extreme temperatures, or distracting surroundings, can also prevent us from fully engaging in the conversation. Recognizing these barriers helps us understand that effective listening isn't just about paying attention. It's also about creating the right physical conditions for it. So, being aware of these obstacles allows us to take steps to minimize them and improve our communication overall. Let's take a closer look at some physiological barriers that can impact communication. First, the state of health plays a significant role. If a person is unwell, their ability to understand or respond can be affected. Next, disability is an important factor to consider. Disabilities, whether physical, sensory, or cognitive, can create unique challenges in how information is received and processed. Wandering attention is another key point. This refers to how someone's focus might drift, especially in situations where they might be overwhelmed or distracted. Recognizing these barriers is crucial because it helps us tailor our communication approaches to be more effective and inclusive. By understanding these physiological factors, we can better support meaningful interactions, ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to engage fully. This aligns with our overall goal of creating accessible and respectful communication environments. Let's take a look at some common psychological barriers that can impact our communication. First, there's being unsure of the speaker's ability. This is when the audience doubts whether the speaker knows enough or is credible, which can make it harder for the message to be received effectively. Next is personal anxiety, a feeling of nervousness or fear about speaking or being in front of an audience. This can cause hesitation or stumbling, but recognizing it is the first step to overcoming it. Then we have attitude. An audience's attitude towards the speaker or the topic can greatly influence how receptive they are. If they're skeptical or uninterested, it creates a barrier to engagement. Finally, impatience. When listeners are impatient, they may tune out or become distracted, making it difficult to communicate your message clearly. Understanding these barriers helps us develop strategies to address and overcome them, making our communication more effective and ensuring our message resonates. Let's talk about why people often don't listen effectively. The truth is, people are distracted and preoccupied about 75% of the time. That's a huge majority, which really hampers our ability to focus on what's being said. Despite that, we only spend about 45% of our time actually listening. So, even though listening is a critical part of communication, we're not dedicating nearly enough time to it. And here's an interesting point. Immediately after we hear something, we tend to recall only about 50% of it. That means within moments, we're already forgetting half of what was said. Over time, that retention drops even further, down to just 20% of what we originally heard. These statistics highlight a key challenge in effective communication. If we're distracted most of the time, and our memory for spoken words is so limited, it underscores the importance of becoming more mindful and intentional listeners. This connects directly to our overall goal of improving communication skills, because truly understanding and remembering conversations requires us to be present and engaged. Now let's look at some key strategies for listening effectively. First, stop talking. Yes, it sounds simple, but often we're tempted to jump in or think about what we're going to say next. Instead, focus on truly hearing the other person. Asking questions is also crucial. It shows you're engaged and helps clarify what's being said, making the conversation more meaningful. Showing interest is another important point. Nodding, leaning in, giving verbal affirmations. These all signal that you're genuinely tuned in. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is be silent. Silence can give the speaker space to think and share more deeply. Maintaining eye contact is essential here. It builds trust and keeps both of you connected. Listen creatively. That means not just hearing words, but also picking up on tone, emotion, and underlying messages. And don't forget to empathize, to put yourself in the other person's shoes and understand their feelings. Finally, practicing these listening techniques consistently is what makes a real difference. When we listen well, we foster better relationships and create an environment of mutual respect. These skills align perfectly with the overall theme of effective communication, because listening is just as important as speaking. Let's take a moment to consider some additional tips that can really enhance our communication. First, wait and watch for nonverbal communication. Sometimes, what someone is not saying with words can tell us just as much, if not more, about how they're feeling or what they're thinking. Paying attention to body language, facial expressions, and gestures helps us get the full picture. Next, listen for ideas, not just words. Often, the core message is just in what's spoken, but in the underlying ideas and emotions behind those words. Being attentive to these nuances can lead to deeper understanding and more meaningful conversations. And finally, put the speaker at ease. Creating a comfortable environment encourages openness and honesty. When people feel at ease, they're more likely to share their true thoughts and concerns, which is essential for effective communication. All of these tips tie back to our overall goal, building stronger, more genuine connections through better listening and observation. So, keep these in mind as you engage in your conversations, and you'll find your interactions becoming more insightful and impactful. And that brings us to our final slide, which is all about references. Here, I've listed some key sources that contributed to this presentation. You'll notice all about Learning Press, which is a fantastic resource for learning strategies and literacy development. Then there's the AuthorStream presentation, where some of the content was adapted or inspired from. Additionally, SlideShare listening skills provided valuable insights into effective listening techniques. These references are important because they give credit to the original authors and also serve as resources if you want to explore the topics further. Remember, understanding where the information comes from helps us build a solid foundation for our learning journey. Thank you for your attention throughout this presentation.